Take us to the moment when you realized that you are a healer.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question because it really didn't fully come into awareness until I had my own personal crisis. It's a story that I could write a book about, but I'll keep it really short. I started getting into yoga because it was recommended to me by a counselor because I was like, I'm feeling kind of depressed, like I should see a counselor. She's like, you should start doing yoga. And so I took her advice. I started doing yoga. I went on to become a yoga teacher. I had an experience that I didn't understand what had happened to me until actually years later, but essentially I went through a Kundalini awakening experience that was really quite brutal. It was really hard on my physical body. And so I suddenly had crazy symptoms. I mean, I had always been healthy and suddenly, I was anemic, my period disappeared, hair was falling out, I was having all kinds of extraordinary experiences. And so when I couldn't find answers, and I tried going to acupuncturists, I tried going to regular medical doctors, I tried psychiatry, I mean, everything. And this was about a 2-year span of time that I went through this, and really the only thing that brought some relief was when I discovered Reiki. A friend had introduced me to a woman, said, you should go see her, she's a clairvoyant, she's a healer. And the experience was so profound and so, it was like, clearly I went in feeling one way, and then something clearly happened in the session, and I felt some relief, And so it took me down the path of curiosity of like, whoa, what is this? And so immediately I wanted to learn Reiki for myself. And so, yeah, it's just kind of been this lifelong journey of understanding, okay, what's really going on in the human experience? Not everything is what it seems. There are many dimensions, and energy is real, and it informs everything in our life. And so when I started doing Reiki, it just was very natural to me. And I think as a child, I was always very sensitive. Animals were always drawn to me. Children are naturally drawn to me. People, when they're around me, they're always like, tell me their life story and all their problems, and just, it's like, and I'm just standing there, so there's something about who I am, and as an empath, as a really intuitive, sensitive person, that whatever, I touched the person and they were suddenly healed. It wasn't anything like that. It was definitely a process. So, but it was definitely something I was naturally drawn to. It was like, once I started down that path, I just wanted to learn more and more and more, and I guess develop my own capacities. Yeah.
And you mentioned that your own journey was kind of caused by things that you've experienced in your own past. And from what I can observe in this world is that most people feel like that they are carrying a lot of heavy load in their hearts, in their souls, because of a lot of trauma that they have experienced during childhood, during school, and with other areas of life, so to speak. Even in the workplace, you can be traumatized by certain things that can happen to you, right? And what do you feel, based on your experience and knowledge, what is causing and fostering that much of trauma in this world?
Trauma is definitely something that just it gets passed down, and it's totally unconscious, right? Because if people actually knew what they were doing to another human being by their actions, they'd be like horrified. They'd be like, oh my God, what am I doing? But it's not. There is no awareness, there is no consciousness. It's just this pattern that gets passed through. And because, I feel like trauma is something that nowadays is getting talked a lot about, because we all carry it. everybody has trauma. I don't think there's a single person on the planet that doesn't have some kind of trauma. Of course, some have more than others. But I know for myself, in my experience, is, one of the reasons I went through that healing crisis is because I was carrying stuff that didn't belong to me, stuff from my parents, even there, and further back. There's often times where we're processing something that is coming from our grandparents or great-grandparents to be resolved and healed. So why is there so much trauma in the world? I think it's always been there. I think what's happening now is that because we're beginning to wake up collectively, I think we're suddenly, it's like everything's coming up to the surface all at once. There is this awakening, and the light is always moving towards the dark. It's not the other way around. And so as more light is coming into our being, into our awareness, then naturally it's going to illuminate more of what hasn't been seen or hasn't been acknowledged. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it appears that there's so much.
That's a very interesting view, and would explain why we see so much of it. Not only because we have all the media, and social media is also bigger and bigger with every year that we are here, right? We have more and more social media platforms where we are constantly also bombarded with different news and perspectives and what have you. And we can have or get the impression that it is more now. And as you said, it might have been here all the time or always, right? Ever since humans have been here on this earth. And maybe there's no way to avoid trauma, because you don't know another person that well to avoid trauma at all times. You are always kind of acting from your own interest first, right? Even if you are the most empathic person, you still can only act from your own perspective and trying to fulfill your own needs first, right?
Right.
So I think it's maybe an illusion to try to avoid any type of trauma, but at least what we can do is, as you say, shed light onto all that trauma, acknowledge it without becoming defensive or aggressive about it, right? And really accept the fact that no matter what we do, we will always have some type of trauma that we carry in ourselves.
Yeah.
But also that we cause to other people, even if we don't want to cause any trauma or any negative thing to another person. It will happen eventually.
Yeah.
But if we go in with an open mind and an open heart and really listen to people when they actually tell us, hey, this is a traumatic experience that I've gone through because of what you did, I think we can speed up the cycle of healing. And I think this is where we need to go. Not be stuck in that defensiveness and or shoving it down, the carpet, so to speak. The trauma, there is no trauma, right? It's all in your head. You're just imagining things, right? Not doing these things, but really acknowledging the fact that if a person speaks out about trauma, we need to be open to not only listen to that person, but also be a healing container for that person. At least, maybe that's only me, maybe that's just a selected few who have that type of mindset, if you will, or have been born with a specific set that they are healers, so to speak. Maybe not everyone is like that, but I see it as my job, and you seem to be the same way, that I want to be the container for people to find a way to heal. And if I cause trauma, I will acknowledge that. I will listen. I will try to repair. I will try to make things right.
Right, which is why humility is so important. And I think too, I think one of the bigger realizations that I've had in the last couple years is, and I think I can say this with confidence, if you're someone that has been through a lot of trauma, we can fall into this really strong, limiting belief that I'm too broken, I've, like, oh, I've had so much trauma that I'm broken, essentially. And so a lot of people walk around thinking that, and so they stop there. And the reality is like, if I'm, or the belief that I carried too much trauma, so I can't be successful in life, or I can't really create the life that I want. And so we get trapped in this idea of that, oh, well, I have to be perfect before I can move forward in my life. And it's like, well, if everyone believed that, we'd be a mess. Nothing would get done. We would never move forward. And so when you really realize, I think it's helpful that when you acknowledge within yourself and in everyone else, and okay, everybody's had trauma. I'm not special, I'm not too broken, I'm not, I'm just a human being, and we're all going through life, and we're all working through our stuff, and it's okay, I'm a work in progress, let's say. So I think that's really important to know.
What have you seen are the three main types of traumas in your clients?
I guess, unfortunately, the three main ones that come up a lot, and I work mostly with women, so I haven't worked with a lot of men, but what I see is, oftentimes sexual abuse, some kind of molestation, alcoholism, or drug abuse, some kind of addiction in the lineage, and a super common one is actually not being seen as a child, not being seen for who you actually were as a child, but just not being seen, of just being projected upon, not acknowledged, etc. And so that's really a big one too. So I would say those three are the ones I see the most.
Now, when you mentioned the last one, it really reminds me of the parenting style, or the general parenting that I see, at least in the Western world, where parents tend to blame the child for pretty much everything. And as a voice trainer, I do have a bigger view on people when it comes to communication, so I'm really focused on that. So or my awareness, at least, is more open when it comes to communication. I notice things when things go wrong in that realm. And what parents do is they not only blame the child for everything that the child does without acknowledging their own mistakes, but they also don't equip the kids enough to communicate. And then this is one of the things that will happen later in life, that when they become adults, they realize that this is one of their traumas, that they have not been seen as they are, because the parents never had the skills or the knowledge how to teach the children how to properly communicate, how to show themselves in all their colors, right? And at the same time, the inability of the parent to acknowledge their own limits, that they themselves are very limited in their own communication, right, a communication style, so that they tend to divert the blame, so to speak, onto the child, which is also one of the biggest traumas that I see personally in my work, trauma around the type of communication that has taken place, and especially if there is a lot of drug abuse going on in the household, the communication also drops very, very low, so the child never gets the chance to actually learn the skills of communication and resolving problems and actually becoming aware of certain things. So it's very interesting how this is also interconnected.
Children are really smart, so they learn really quickly how to adapt and survive those situations. So if it wasn't safe to speak up, well, then maybe you learned how to people please really well, or if you weren't allowed to speak out against authority, well, then you always obeyed authority, so yeah, absolutely. It's definitely coming into light, and part of my background is also education, so I worked a lot with children as well. and positive discipline, these kind of things, they are skills that have to be learned. And so that's the thing with our, like my parents and generations past, they weren't taught these skills. So I guess that's the good news, is that there is that education out there for parents to actually learn, how do you actually connect with your child? How do you, because parents genuinely want their children to feel loved and to shine, but yeah, if all this other stuff's in the way, then it's definitely a problem.
And I feel that we might only discover our own deep-rooted traumas when we have children. So someone might think,
Yeah.
oh, I will heal myself first and then I will have children. This is the advice that I also get constantly on social media. You should be healed before you have kids. Now, the problem is that you will not even see what kind of trauma you are carrying in your subconscious mind unless you have to take care of someone that is absolutely helpless and needs you 24/7. And if you are a single mom, you will discover even more trauma, I believe.
Oh, yes.
You will have absolutely no sleep for the next 2 years or 3 years at least. So you need to be like so ready to discover so many things, not only the most beautiful things in seeing someone grow up and really flourish, but also your own flaws, like the most hated things about yourself. You will discover a lot, right? And
Yeah.
you will also discover a lot of ancestral trauma, which is also part of your work, what you focus on, right? And I would love to know, what are the signs of ancestral trauma? How can I recognize that?
Ancestral trauma, the way that it shows up in my experience is that it usually shows up as patterns that just keep repeating themselves no matter what you do. Like for me, I realized that a lot of my physical ailments, my health issues, that just were so persistent. I'm like, what is going on? Like, it's like one thing after another. When I had my own family constellation done for myself, my first one ever, it was obviously really apparent that I had been I was carrying and processing through my body the trauma of my mother's lineage. And so it can show up as, relationship issues, like you just keep falling into the same pattern in relationships where whatever, who knows what happens, but you can imagine people struggling, not being able to stay in a relationship for very long, or just not meeting the right person. It can also show up as sabotage, let's say every time you try to start up a business, it fails, and it just keeps failing and failing and failing. And you're like, I'm doing all the things, I don't understand. Like, what is it, So things that show up as chronic patterns that just don't seem to move, no matter what you consciously try to do. So it's all very deep in the subconscious, and so yeah, that's how it shows up.
And what are the types of ancestral traumas that you have discovered in your clients the most?
Things like war, for example. Like if a family had to flee in order to be safe. Other traumas are also deaths, untimely deaths in the family. If there's a death that hasn't been acknowledged, things like like children that die very young, or miscarriages, or things like that, where that child's death is not acknowledged. It's kind of just swept under the rug, like nobody talks about it. That can show up again. Let's see, what other things, like infidelity, criminal behavior in the ancestry, that's not, addressed, things like that. And also too, I would say, like, one of the most common things that can show up is religion, actually. So religion is a big one, just indoctrination, and that can go on for many, many generations, whether it's the Catholic Church or whatever, and these beliefs that we end up inheriting that just don't resonate. So maybe we're carrying shame around sex, or we're carrying, that somehow we're guilty of something. I see that a lot too, in clients, where if there's a lot of religious indoctrination, which there's plenty of in the world, right? That's a big one.
So why should people actually care to heal their trauma? You could think that if it's in my subconscious and I don't really get to see it or be aware of it, why should I care? What would happen if I don't heal my trauma?
First of all, you can pass it on to your children, if you have children. I think we're at a time where we are all being asked to step into our fullest and highest potential. Like, I really do feel that everyone is needed at this time, and we can't really afford at this point in the the history of humanity that we stay stuck, that we stay in our unconscious patterns and just kind of go through the motions and that's it. I think that if we care about future generations, then we need to really choose to step into our fullest potential, because the reality is that when you heal, then everything else shifts and changes. Other people are affected. So, and this is something that isn't super transparent, but when your energy shifts, you step into a room or you step into somebody else's presence, that person, you're actually assisting them also to up level or awaken them. So we're all connected. And so I acknowledge that maybe not everybody is going to answer the call or care enough, but the bottom line from what I've learned is that you can either transform in a good way or you can transform via the ugly way. And the ugly way is essentially that you hit rock bottom, that your addiction gets so bad that you almost die, or you know what I mean? And that becomes the wake-up call to transformation. But we don't have to go that way. We don't have to go deeper and deeper into more pain and suffering in order to awaken. We have an opportunity, and we have tools now that allows us to consciously make the choice, like, I want to have a good life. I want to be happy. I want to be at peace. I want to experience love, and connection. So.
And yet my impression is that most people will wait until they hit rock bottom, because the current state is just too comfortable, it's just too safe, so to speak. Mm-hmm. They have gotten so used to even the pain. Like you can see that all the time. When people, for example, get sick for a longer time, they can get used to the type of pain, and then they just accept it as it is, and they accept their state, and they even accept the fact that they will die, even though this is not their end station. Most of the time, no matter your illness, no matter the sickness, it is never the end station. You still have ways to heal yourself, because this is my belief, the natural state of the body is healing. It is in a constant process of healing. So unless you stand against it or you block your body, it will not heal, obviously. And the same with trauma, right? If you let your body heal and you don't block it consciously or subconsciously, it will naturally find a way to heal. And it frustrates me, to be honest, that so many people still choose that comfortable space where they are struggling so much. And I don't know why they choose that type of existence and believe that there is no way out, or are even afraid of possible consequences that might not even be real consequences, but again, maybe even brainwashing or being brainwashed from generation to generation, right? This is also ancestral trauma when it comes to history, when it comes to what we believe will happen if we rock the boat, whatever boat that is, right? So I've been in that boat for the longest time myself, but I found a way to rock not only one boat, but pretty much the whole ship, the whole thing, to find a way out of a lot of trauma that I've encountered. And I was so sick of it. Because as you say, you will give it to your children, whether you want it or not, whether you are a good person, you have a good heart, you're an empath, you will not avoid giving your ancestral trauma to your children. So the best thing that you can do is really become aware of it and find someone who can guide you through that type of work, because it takes work. It will not be, oh, magically it will disappear, but the heavier the trauma is, the more work it will require of you. And the lower your skills are to actually, the skills of awareness and again communication, the more intense the work will actually be. And I feel like many people are not ready for that. They shy away from that type of work because it's scary, because you will have to face shame and blame and all that stuff. And they are probably afraid of the amount of pain that they would have to go through. And if you have not experienced any kind of significant pain, like for example a mother did during giving birth to a child, we are much more likely to go into that space because we have experienced the most horrible pain that there is. So we know this can't be worse, right? This is my impression.
Yeah, it's so intense. Why do people not step up to the plate? And I see it all the time. You know, it's just, sometimes there's just major resistance. And I think, you know, as a healer, you have to just trust the process. Everybody's at a different level in their soul evolution, and those that are ready will step into the work, and those that aren't, you know, you hold space. But yeah, I see it mostly as fear, and also I think what's really interesting is it's a fear of actually what would happen if I really, really loved myself. Like for some people that's terrifying. They don't want to face that, because I think that's the hard part, is when you see how much you haven't been loving yourself. It's painful. It's painful to acknowledge and accept. Yeah.
I think what will also happen is when you start moving away from the person that you've been all your life, you will basically, if you are serious about healing, that is, you will basically have to kill the person that you've always been, but also kill the type of connections that you've always had, especially with your family, with your core family. If there's a lot of trauma in your family and you decide to cut these cords and to not be in that toxic environment anymore, or even challenge it, or even speak up, you will give them a reason to attack you on many levels. And so this is maybe subconsciously also a fear that people have. They don't want to lose their families, no matter how traumatic that might have been the experience, because I feel subconsciously we know the closest that we have is really the family. So we can go out into the world, we can find friends and a second family, but you will always have to go back to your blood. This is like the closest bond, and maybe I'm naive in that belief, I don't know, but that's how I grew up. Maybe that's an ancestral trauma as well that I have to discover. That there is more than your core family. But really the bond that you have with your real family, it can never be closer than that.
That brings up the power of family constellations. Let's say that I had the worst parents in the world, whatever. They beat me, they this, they that, they were awful. And it's like, well, how can you heal that? You know, how can you possibly heal that? Like, and so Bert Hellinger, who came up with Family Constellations work, basically says that, you know, if you reject your parents, no matter who they are, you're disrupting an order of love. So how do we get to the place where we can connect to the love that is there, no matter how buried it is? And so the beauty of Family Constellations is that we all have our story. We all think, oh, my mother's this way because this, and this, and my dad is this way because of this, and that's the end of the story. When you step into Family Constellations, you step out of the story and you come from more of a bird's eye view, and so you start this process of unveiling, and you begin to see, oh, my mother was this way because her mother did this to her, and then her mother's mother did this, and there's all of this stuff, right? And so we have to disentangle from all of that, and, you know, give back what doesn't belong to us, you know, and so there are these healing sentences and movements that are spontaneous and very organic that happen in a constellation, where that gets brought to light, and where, you know, ultimately you can get to the place where you can honor your parents, if at the very least that they gave you life, right? And you connect the reality that everything that your ancestors went through, whether it was good or bad, they're the reason why you're here. And so when we can connect to that, there's a shift that happens at the soul level, where we can finally let go, find forgiveness. And maybe you don't necessarily, let's say your parents are still alive and they don't acknowledge what they did or anything like that. It doesn't mean that you necessarily, reconnect with your parents and then you end up having a lovey-dovey relationship. That can happen. It happens. I mean, shifts can happen like that. But if it's not in the cards, and let's say your mother just, obviously continues to be a horrible person, but at least you're not entangled with her. You see her for what she is, and you're no longer trying to get something from her that is just not available. But at least you can just say, okay, well, she's my mother. She gave me life. I see what she's had to go through. I can let her go. I can let that go. It doesn't belong to me. And I can move forward with my life, Now,
when it comes to forgiveness, I find I have been busy with the work of forgiveness for the longest time. And I think the hardest part about it is to really forgive the other person. And I don't think this is really possible, or maybe I'm at a stage where I believe it's not possible. What I believe is possible, though, is forgiving yourself for making choices in the past that have brought person XYZ into your life, or made your parents react in this or that way, and forgiving yourself, especially for holding on to that grudge, blame, shame, whatever you have given onto your parents, but also onto yourself for so many years. Yeah. Because if you really want empowerment, you need to actually let go of everything that has happened to you. Yeah. If you want to act from your own liberation, so to speak, or from your own freedom and state of grace, then you have to become a little bit selfish in that sense, that you start to uncover what you have done to yourself. Not necessarily looking outward what people done to you, but what have you done to yourself, that you allowed certain things to happen, that you allowed certain people to do XYZ to you. And I think this is real empowerment, when you really take that responsibility, that you had a part in this. You decided in what way ever to experience this. However horrible it was, you had a say in this. Unless you were a baby, then you probably didn't have caused anything major, so to speak. But as soon as you start to speak and to walk as a child, you make choices, and based on these choices you will be confronted with a person that will have a certain personality, ancestral trauma, and etc. So there will be an interplay between you. So you can start by forgiving yourself, because that's the easiest work, I feel. And if you don't find the way to forgive the person, because I am struggling with that, like a lot. With certain people, it's really hard. I could not say that I could ever forgive them for whatever they done. But I can forgive myself, because that gives me the ability to find freedom, to really make better choices, because I start to see where it was my fault, where I influenced this particular outcome.
Right. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that subject of forgiveness, because in a family constellation, it's never ever expected of the client that they have to forgive anyone. There's just, really the whole goal is I mean, you've heard the saying, the truth shall set you free. That's all we're trying to discover, is to really name the truth. And we are creating our reality. I mean, that's, when you get into quantum physics and the nature of who we are, when you really go down that rabbit hole, it's like, you're creating everything. So when we shift those perspectives in our mind and in our hearts, and we come to these revelations, then your reality absolutely begins to just spontaneously shift.
And you mentioned constellations work and briefly described what it would look like. Can you tell me more about it? I've never heard about constellation work, so I'm curious how that works.
Yeah. So it was created by Bert Hellinger. He was a German psychotherapist. I think it started coming out in the 90s, this type of work. And basically you're working with what is called as the knowing field. I would say another word for that could be, Indra's net, or, maybe the Akashic records, although that's a little bit different. But the knowing field is just essentially that everything that has ever happened is in this field of consciousness that we can tap into, and we can actually discover for ourselves, okay, what actually happened. Now, the reason why Family Constellations is so powerful is because, as the client, if we're dealing with something, because we're colored by our stories, exactly a neutral participant, right? So when you bring in somebody else to essentially do the work for you, then you, as a client, can just observe and watch what comes through. So I do a lot of one-on-one family constellations work. It can also be experienced as a workshop where there's many, many people participating, but essentially a client comes to you, they give you an issue. Let's say, I'm struggling with cancer, let's say. And I don't necessarily need to know the story of, like, how long has it been? How did it start? What happened in her childhood? I don't want to hear anything, because that will color the constellation information that comes through. So let's say she's dealing with that. And so I just begin to ask questions. Okay, well, tell me about your family of origin. Who was your father? Who was your mother? Were there siblings? Were there any untimely deaths? Just facts. And then as a constellator, what happens is then I set up the field. And for me, when it's a one-on-one, I use stones as representatives. So let's say I bring a stone in for the father, I bring in a stone for the mother, I bring a stone in for the client, etc. And it starts to unfold. And as the constellator, then I essentially step into each representative's field And what's amazing about this work, and I've just seen it over and over again, even from people who aren't necessarily healers, like if you're doing it in a workshop format, you just start to feel things. Things start coming through. Like maybe if I were to step into the Father's field, let's say, oh wow, I feel a pain in my heart. I'm feeling whatever it is, and I just start communicating that. And so we see what's happening in the field, what's going on with each of the representatives. If I need to bring in grandmother or great-grandmother or great-grandfather or whoever as the field unfolds, then we start to see a larger picture. And what then ends up happening is then we begin to see the disorders or the entanglements. So Bert Hellinger talked about the orders of love. He says there's a natural order to love. And so when we see these disorders or these, role reversals, like, the child's being the parent and the parent's being the child, or, whatever, then we try on healing sentences. First, we start by naming the truth. And so let's say the father projected a lot onto the client as a child. Then I would step into the father's field and I may say, I'm sorry that I did this to you. I'm sorry that I abused you. That didn't belong to you. I take it back. Leave it with me. Let's say that's the healing sentence. And then we'll see what shifts. We'll see if that's actually received. We'll see. So things start to shift and change until ultimately, hopefully, by the end, there's a feeling of peace or resolution. Sometimes it doesn't happen because a constellation can only move so much. Let's say there's a lot of trauma and maybe you need a few sessions. But you take a constellator, you take it as far as it wants to go. And so does that make sense today? It's hard to describe because it's one of those things that is very experiential, and talking about it can be difficult to visualize, but essentially you're tapping into the knowing field and you're getting information that you wouldn't otherwise get. And so you're working with the energy, and through the healing sentences, and the power of the word, the client will feel a release or a giving back of something that doesn't belong to them.
That sounds fascinating. Can you share a client story, a success story maybe that has impacted you the most, and why?
Yeah, so I had one client. She had a lot of trauma. She had one of those childhoods where she was really overweight because she ate a lot to, soothe her emotions, rejected. There was a lot of Catholic indoctrination. There was alcoholism, all the things. She, got pregnant very young as a young teenager. The father was a drug addict, all these things. And so here she came to me as she was in her late 50s, I would say, and she had started her healing process and working with a counselor and this kind of a thing. And so she was then referred to me. And so I gave her we did 6 sessions together. And she was at a point in her life where she just felt just unhappy, stuck, that, she was in a job she didn't really like. And she had happily remarried, thankfully. So she had that going for her as far as, her evolution. It's not that we can't evolve without this work, but she was just ready to really just let go of all of these things. And she had always kind of kept her gifts hidden. She, I guess she really deep down wanted to be a death doula. She wanted to work with the dying because she felt that she was, really able to connect with spirit and provide comfort and peace to the dying. But because she had all this baggage and so much self-doubt and all of this stuff, that she just wasn't pursuing it. And so we moved through a lot of stuff, and every week it was like the gratitude that she experienced was really moving, because we'd go through a session and she'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling this and I'm seeing that. And by the end of the 6 sessions, she found a position with I don't know what you call those old folk homes, or hospice center, and started her training, and she just transformed before my eyes, honestly. Like, I just saw her just step into so much positivity and self-love and self-acceptance, really letting go of all of the shame and the guilt, and choosing to just embrace herself, who she is and what she wants to express. So even as someone that late in life, it's like, yeah, it's never too late. And think like, oh, if I had done that 20 years ago, maybe I'm too old for that now, my life's over, like I'm just, it's not true. Like, you can, it's incredible. So
now, while you were telling me this, I could almost feel how it impacted you. Like, as a healer or as an empath, you always take whatever clients tell you, and it is very hard to disconnect from that, right? You almost go through it yourself, whatever you hear.
yeah.
How do you find the balance for yourself to not be affected too much by a lot of trauma, because you work a lot with that?
Yeah.
Because when I noticed that I'm an empath and I feel everything that people around me feel, I got really scared, because it drowned me almost. And it is very, very difficult to find a balance, which is probably one of the reasons why I didn't go into that space, because maybe I didn't believe in myself that I could find the balance or a way to disconnect myself from that type of feelings and concern for my clients. How do you do this?
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot of self-care. No doubt about it. You do have to, stay focused enough to not lose yourself in thinking like, oh, I have to heal everyone. Like, it's really, we ultimately have to put ourselves first, right? So for me personally, it really just boils down to taking time to nourish myself, whether it's going out in nature. I have to be really committed to, eating healthy foods and getting good sleep and being gentle with myself, and really just, consciously letting go of the stories that, I'm not responsible for anybody's healing. I mean, ultimately people are healing themselves, but I do know what you mean. It can be very, very draining, especially if it's a constellation that is really heavy. So you do have to give yourself the time to reset and nourish yourself. Yeah, it's definitely not the kind of work where you can just go. You'll burn out. You'll burn out.
20 clients a day.
Yeah, no way. Oh my God. Forget it. You'll just be a pile of mush, Yeah.
It's so funny. This is like one of the most important types of work. At least I cherish it a lot. All the healers, all the people who go into natural healing and medicine, I cherish those people so much, and at the same time I see how much the world does not really cherish them enough, because it seems like we are being pushed and rushed into delivering like on clockwork, right? As I said, 20 clients a day, right? This
Yeah.
massive amount of quantity that is almost expected of us. Otherwise, you're not the go-getter. You're not really that superwoman that everybody expects you to be. Right? As soon as you take time for yourself, as soon as you slow down, like all people try to mess with your head and tell you that you need to do more and achieve more and you can do more, and you're not believing in yourself, you don't do more. Like this is a lot of dissonance that I feel,
Yeah.
that for especially for empaths and introverts and healers is a quite tough time nowadays,
Yeah.
where so much is going on and expected of us. It is very hard to
Yeah.
say nope, this is
Yeah.
not how I operate, and really go back into your own timing, into your own rhythm, and really, as you said, respect yourself and take the time, slow down. This is tremendous work, and I hope that with my show I can give more space to people like you who are in that space and who do such tremendous and important work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that do more. I mean, that's our capitalistic, consumeristic, Western psychosis that doesn't want to let go, right? I mean, it's gonna go, but it's hanging on for dear life. Yeah, it's time to do things differently and to honor our human self. We're human beings. Like it's yeah, not human doings, right? The cliche quote. So yeah.
I think what will happen is, with AI now being so much going forward into the future and developing all kinds of solutions to problems that we were never able to solve with our own brains, maybe that's the kind of constellation that we needed to finally accept our humanness and take time for our humanness. That's at least my hope for the future, that AI will turn out to be something that will take away all the heavy lifting of being a human and actually allow us to have the space and the time and even the money to really let go. And I feel that we will unlock so much potential, so much enormous creativity that was hidden all these centuries before, because we were just busy with the bare minimum, right? Finding food, preparing the food, building houses and all that stuff. And I hope that with this new era, we will unlock a different kind of world that I really hope is going into a positive direction, and
Yeah.
not into direction of destruction and doing more and destroying the humanness even more. So
Right.
is this the type of new earth consciousness that you are talking about, or is there
Yeah.
something else?
Yeah, the new earth consciousness, for me, I'm still processing, what is AI? What does it mean? It's coming so hard and fast. I feel like I'm an old lady, but, I'm like kind of resisting it at the moment. But I'm hearing a lot that it's neutral, and I could see where, just like anything else, it depends on how you use it. So new earth consciousness is really, we all know that we have to come into right relationship with the planet, with the earth and all her creatures. If we don't, we're done. Earth will continue. She'll be fine. Her creatures will be fine. We're the ones that will suffer. And so, we're biological. We're not technological, right? So we're these amazingly designed biological beings that hold light and information. We are infinite in our soul nature, and I think that we're entering into a realm where we're going to be receiving more and more of our gifts. Gifts of clairvoyance, telepathy, clairgnosis. Being able to communicate cross species, connecting with the tree and being able to receive information, and just rather than right now we turn to the internet for answers, right? We're always like Googling this and Googling that. What if we evolved to this level of consciousness where we just know what we know because we're able to access it, and we're able to access our inner wisdom and connect with the earth, so we become it's and it's already been talked about that we're becoming more crystalline, right? And kind of moving away from being carbon-based biology into this crystalline, right? And so that's a big shift. And so I think that, New Earth consciousness is where we no longer there's no more question about what's the right thing to do, right? We know we have a deeper understanding of who we are as human beings. What does it mean to evolve as a human being? And that we are able to develop systems that are, that aren't destroying things, they're actually generative, calling in natural abundance, right? And so we need to redefine what abundance is. It's not about having a lot of things, but abundance in all areas of life. Education, agriculture, architecture, like all the things, like just seeing all those systems change in such a way where, we just come into a more harmonious world that's, full of beauty and order, So that's how I see New Earth consciousness. I think it'll just be a huge paradigm shift where that just becomes the new story, right?
I love how you put it when you said we contain light and knowledge. I like the idea of light, especially because if there are no people left, so to speak, who know what light is and how to actually keep it up inside of their bodies and minds, and how to share it or how to spread it, so to speak, then I don't have much hope for this world, to be honest. When I look at everything that is happening, not only now, but like the last centuries, what has happened to the earth, to people, and I think that it is more important than ever now to remind people of what light is, how to encourage the light in you, and how to share it actually, so that it spreads beautifully without forcing other people to have light in them, but have an organic spread of beautiful light that would heal other people. I'm so passionate about healing. Without healing, there's really no freedom. And maybe I'm more passionate about freedom because of this.
Well, that's the ultimate, that's what we're all striving for, right? It's freedom.
The feeling of knowing what you want and having the chance to actually do what you want, so to speak, in very basic terms. But you will never be able to achieve that type of freedom, that we strive even more than we strive for money, I believe. Even those people who are super successful and have lots of money, I think what they are really striving for is really the freedom. And they realize that type of urge and need for freedom in money terms. But there are also there are different levels of freedom, right? You can find enormous freedom in relationships, right? When you actually build relationships and you have, let's say, a partner that you have such a beautiful, I tell a love story that others are so envious of. This is the type of freedom that you can build, right? And you mentioned the fact that we are able to actually create freedom on all levels, not just one type of level. And this is the chance that we are looking at right now, that with all the knowledge, all the technology, and all the tools and everything that is within us, we actually have the chance to build freedom on all levels. There's nothing holding us back anymore, because we have the mentors, we have the leaders, we have all the knowledge that we need. And my big hope is that people will truly wake up truly find the spark within themselves to feel motivated to go out and grab it, because it's there, it's theirs, right? I could almost say that it is their birthright. Freedom really is their birthright. But I see that many are letting different things, whether it is trauma or outside sources, debilitate their own beliefs in themselves and not
Yeah.
free themselves completely, not demand certain things, demand from themselves also to level up, to speak up, to make certain moves, to open up certain realms that have been closed up before. This is the only hope I have, the only thing that I personally work towards, to foster healing in people so that they can find freedom, because a free person will not harm anyone. A free person, an abundant person, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, will have no reason to harm another being.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's, I think that deep down the sense of freedom is, you know, we want to be able to, we want our lives to have meaning. We want to, you know, we want to create. We want to turn towards life. We want to, you know, have that experience of love, essentially, and to have the freedom to be able to move where love is telling us to go, right? Yeah.
Now, here's a hard question. If you only had one day left to live, who would you spend it with and why?
Yeah. When I saw this question, I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it came up immediately, and I hope it's not disappointing. But for me, it's like, I'd love to hang out with Jesus Christ for many reasons. One, I really want to know what the real story is, right? Like, we don't really know. We have the Bible, we have, you know, things that have talked about it, but I would love to know, okay, what really happened in his life? What was it really like for him? I'd love to have that conversation. And just to have that experience. I think just to know really what the truth is. I'd love to have that, and to ask him questions about, like, so what do you think about all this that has been built up around him as this figure, you know? And just ask all the questions. And ask him about healing, you know? What does it mean? Where does he see that we're going? You know, we only can go by what was said about him. So, for me, that's what came to my mind. So I had just gone with it.
I find it very interesting that you say Jesus. Now, what would you feel most disappointed by that he could ever tell you in that last day conversation,
right?
Last Supper?
Yeah. I would think, gosh, what would be the most disappointing thing? Well, you know, I feel like I've already been disappointed so many times in my life when I've looked up to somebody that I don't know. I mean, I guess I could imagine him saying something like, all the answers are already within you. Like, really, like, you can ask me everything that you want, but ultimately you have to find it for yourself. And that would just be like, oh no, I just want the quick, like, you know, just enlighten me so I can just, you know. But I think that as all, you know, all spiritual teachers have always said, you know, they talk about, oh, it's, you know, we're just the finger pointing at the moon, you know, all these teachings. It's just the finger pointing at the moon. You have to discover it for yourself. No one's going to be able to tell you, oh, do this, this, and this, and boom, you know, you're there, or whatever. I think that's the only thing I could imagine is him saying that, yeah, well, it's you have to figure it out for yourself, you know.
Yeah, and you would have wasted your last day.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah.
And I totally believe in that we have all the answers in us. That is completely true. So why would we need like coaches, mentors, and teachers then? There must be a reason why they exist, right?
I know.
From a quantum physics perspective, there must be a reason. They do fulfill a role. And the only answer that I would find is because they have the ability to activate your awareness. Like,
Yeah.
yes, you have all the answers in you, but sometimes you are so stuck, sometimes you're blocking yourself so much you don't even see that there is a way. You are completely blind to all the possibilities that you could have, or the healing potential that you have.
Yeah.
Which I see all the time. Like when you are a mother, you can clearly see that this is obvious. You need to guide your child, especially when they are small, let's say, right? Guide them
Yeah.
towards a solution because they don't see it, and their conscious mind is not yet so fully developed to see the world how you see it or how you've experienced it. The same with this teacher-mentee relationship. The client is kind of really blind to the solution, even though the solution is in them. So the only role that a teacher can play is by looking at you, feeling into you, recognizing fully who you are, what your opportunities are, and maybe even where the solution lies, and point it out. Even the giving a person the permission, verbal permission, and here communication again comes up. It's so prevalent how important and how impactful the human voice is, and how much impact it creates in other people. The sole existence of the voice saying certain words can open up a door. It can be literally the key to healing for another person. So yes, you can be there and you can hug them and not say anything. That would already be the path to healing. But actually how you use your words as a healer, as a mentor, as a teacher will play such a humongous role in activating their awareness to certain things. When you ask questions, when you guide them, when you even tell them the solution, when you see it right away, right? You can speed up the process. And I think this is the most valuable part about having a mentor. They really speed up time. They speed up the healing process. They shorten the way, because they either know what to do, or they can guide you on that way, and they can tell you, hey, that would probably be a mistake in your case, so be careful on what you decide here, so to speak. They can kind of have a more open eye, because they are not dealing with your trauma. They are dealing with their own, most probably, but they're not dealing with yours, so they are not emotionally entangled with it. They are free from it, so they see more, so to speak, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally.
The good healers are the ones that are very skilled. They just have this knowing or this wisdom to know when to say certain things, because you have to know when that person's ready to hear it. If they're not ready to hear it, I mean, you can cause more harm than good, right? So it does take a certain level of skill and knowing of, okay, how do you move through guiding this person? And and the best healers obviously are the ones that are not going to tell you what to do, right? They always give the power back to the individual. Like, you have free will and choice, but maybe this is what I advise, but yeah, exactly. And my experience in working with, it's always been exactly like you said. It's not necessarily being in the presence of a healer who talks on and on and on and on and on and gives these big long lectures. For me personally, the most impactful and profound moments have been, and it doesn't necessarily even have to come from someone who calls themselves a healer. It could be your brother or your friend or a stranger even, where they just say something a few words or a sentence, and you're just like, whoa, okay, something just happened, you know? The veil is gets removed, you know? So it's removing the veils. So yeah, I really liked how you said that, because it's true.
Yeah, I think there's really no way. We are not an island. We cannot survive in solitude. We cannot find all the answers that we will need. And this is the beauty also, because such beautiful relationships and friendships can develop from seeking help, from healing, actually. So this is the most beautiful thing that can happen to a human being, to find someone who can guide them, who can give space, who understands them, who knows how to listen, and all that stuff. Everything that I feel is coming from you during this whole interview and conversation. This is the most beautiful space that someone can give to another person.
Yeah.
So I really
Yeah.
cherish that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're designed, I mean, that's how human beings are designed. If we were designed to do it all on our own, why are we here? Exactly like you said, we would be on an island. Like, we wouldn't even need to be here if I could just heal everything myself. And yeah, what's the point? So we are designed to be in connection and to need one another, to be interdependent. It's just how it goes. You can't escape that. So yeah.
And we energize ourselves or each other on a very different level that we can ever energize ourselves. When we speak about self-love, that's the kind of contradiction that I see here nowadays happening. A lot of people are moving towards, yes, you have to love yourself, you have to do a lot of self-care, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, when you move away from the interconnectedness or the connection to other people, yes, you do a lot of good work. You heal your trauma, you establish boundaries, all the good stuff. But when you then don't find a way to reconnect to those that you need to reconnect, that you choose to reconnect based on your boundaries and standards and all that good stuff,
Yeah.
and I don't think that you will be energized. And I think from a quantum physics perspective, your cells always strive for more energy. And I think this more energy you will only find through the connection with other people. Good connection, healthy connection. Which is why you have to isolate yourself for a couple of times, however often you do that type of work, right? But then to always find a way to balance back. It's like a seesaw, so to speak.
Yeah. Or like
back and forth, and you dance through life basically with that type of movement, never standing still, neither in solitude nor connecting too much to other people so that you cannot exist on your own. I think we cannot escape this type of pendulum, if you will, that type of movement. It is all rhythm, it is all vibration, and if you deny this natural law, I don't think you can find happiness, healing, success, abundance, whatever you're striving for.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, giving and receiving, right? Yin and yang, it's all there, you know. That's yeah, the fabric of our reality.
What is your vision for humanity now, and specifically also your business?
Yeah, my vision for humanity. Let's see, I wrote this down.
I love that.
Well, and I kind of mentioned it before already, you know, this new earth consciousness, but my vision for humanity, is the transformation of all our systems. You know, our systems clearly are collapsing and are broken, and so my vision is that we turn towards one another and really start putting our higher desires into action. No, you know, not just dreaming about it, but actually going and doing it. And we all have different roles, right? Not everybody's meant to have the newest invention for whatever, you know, a renewable energy resource, for example. Like, that's not going to be me. I'm not a scientist, but you know, but if we each one of us again step into our fullest potential to do what we're actually called to do and what we are, I think that we all have a unique purpose that nobody else can carry out except, you know, yourself. I think that's my vision, is that for everyone to really, to fully, if we all fully step into our purpose, then I just see that, you know, a flourishing of culture and new ways of being and all of that. So, and as far as for my business, I just feel what I have noticed for years and for a long time, and I'm sure you have too, is that it's the women that are stepping up to do the healing. You know, ever 25 years ago when I started, you know, with my first Reiki class, and from then on, every time I'm in a space where it's about healing, it's the women that are present, honestly. And so to me, that's really exciting, and that's powerful. And for my business, I really that's my vision, is to support women into this, what I see as this big movement of, or, you know, people call it the divine feminine, the rising of the divine feminine. So for me, it's about supporting that. And who knows what may develop. I mean, down the road, you know, it might shift and change, but for now, that's what I've been focused on. But yeah, I'll just end it there.
And I love that almost every interview that I have on my podcast goes always back to the divine feminine and feminine energy. And I feel that women are ready for that kind of move and shift. Mm-hmm. And my hope personally is that it does not end up to be as flawed as the feminism was, that women started to believe, the generation of our mothers, right? That they believed so firmly mm-hmm. that this was the right move. And I hope that now with the divine feminine, especially women are very, very careful as to where they are moving with that idea and with their concept, and what they actually accept and who they're listening to. Because women, as perceptive as they are, they can oftentimes be brainwashed even into certain concepts or beliefs that will harm them tremendously, like I believe the feminism did in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. It was not good. Well,
it started good. It was a good idea, but it ended up, especially for the Western world, it ended up in a constellation where the woman did not benefit from it at all. Like when you see the situation what women have to face nowadays, it's horrible. And women are the first ones when it comes to healing, and I firmly believe that they are ready to do the right move.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the feminist movement was really more about women's rights, you know, the right to work and the right to do this and that, but it wasn't connected to the divine feminine, which is, you know, open and receptive and creative, and it's organic, and it doesn't move in a linear fashion, and it doesn't, and so yeah, I mean, it's rising, right? So because we've been so, with all the capitalism, the patriarchy, all of that, and the control and the suppression of the feminine, which is this wild, you know, sexually creative energy and all of that wants to be expressed. I mean, it's exciting because I just see, so, you know, even at just kind of like a grassroots level of women coming together and just sitting in circles, you know, and just sharing their stories and just supporting one another, and so there's this richness and this aliveness and this I feel like this wisdom and knowledge that is like, you know, it's coming up, and it's, you know, hopefully that starts to seep into our systems and to, you know, how we do business and how we, you know, how we live our lives in a way that is balanced.
Yeah, and not at all disconnected from men again, because that could be one of the directions that we could go towards, that I would find very unhealthy for women.
Yeah.
Once again, if they just take on the belief, oh, I'm the queen, I'm the feminine energy embodiment, spirit, what have you, right? All the
Yeah.
words that they invent now to call themselves.
Yeah.
Now, there's a danger to dilute yourself into believing that you need to be in solitude once again, that you don't need anyone else, that you can exist by yourself, that you don't need anything else or anyone else, that you have to focus on self-care, self-love, what have you, and that you even deserve that solitude space. Now, what will happen if you do that as a woman is that you will be completely disconnected from the male energy and men in particular, and we can see that nowadays, the development, the harsh disconnection between men and women, with all the movements that are going on for men who, for example, don't want to do any relationships anymore, who are fed up with everything that women put on the table, so to speak. And I cannot really blame them, because as I see Western women coming from Asia and having a completely different upbringing and view on women, how I grew up is so radically different, that I would say they are could be moving into a wrong direction if they don't seek connection. Once again, if they don't seek understanding. Now, it is not about who has the power. If women seek for power, they will always lose, because they will always strive for the wrong type of power. They will always strive for the male power, and that's not the type of power that would make them successful or powerful.
Right.
Like if you are an elephant and you strive for the power of, or the ability to climb trees, like you will lose, like round up, like.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
You need to recognize your own power, and that's kind of the danger that I see.
Yeah.
And also the belief that I also see and get the impression of the entire world is that you are replaceable, especially because of AI. And this is the type of thing that they want to make us believe. But the truth is, in all the work that I've done, everything that I've experienced in life, every single human being is incredibly unique and is incredibly valuable. Now, the life force that lives in every human being is so precious. And I hope that people recognize that. And women especially, because they are the leaders of creation. They are the leaders of that type of energy.
Which is exciting to think about. If that can finally be given the space to be fully and healthfully expressed, yeah, amazing.
So much abundance.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and your story. It was such a pleasure, such a safe space that you give and share all your valuable experience also with your clients. I really valued the time spending with you.
Likewise, Ella. It's nice to connect with someone that's on the same wavelength. It's always inspiring, and I just get so turned on when I meet people that are tuned into the same vision and hope for humanity. It's really, really beautiful, and thank you so much.